AP History students, here's the strategy that's going to help you score better than 92% of students on your SAQs. Tip number one is you're going to skip questions 1 and 2 at first, and you're going to go right to questions 3 and 4. And there's two reasons why you want to do this. Number one is it's the only question set where you have a choice on which one you answer. So if you know more about colonial policies or like British policies that led to the American Revolution, boom, you're going to answer 3. If you know more about Cold War policies, you're going to answer 4. And the other reason why you're going to jump and answer this one first is because there's no stimulus. These are just basic questions that you're going to be able to answer quicker. So this one was from last year's APUSH exam, and I would think both of these are just money in the bag. But what you'll do is when you jump here, read over all the question sets for 3 and 4, and then take a minute to decide which one do you know more about, and then you'll spend your time answering those 3 questions, getting those 3 points. Then you're either going to answer question 1 or question 2. Question 1 is always going to look like this. It's going to be 2 historians talking about one topic from 2 slightly different perspectives. What I would do is read it over quickly to figure out what's the topic here. So this is about women's rights, and it shows you the time. It's kind of women's rights movement in the antebellum period. If you don't remember much about this, I would skip this and go to the next question. Question 2 is always going to be about a political source. It might be like some kind of a propaganda poster, a political cartoon, a photograph, or it could be a reading. This one, Social Security Administration, how easy is that? So if you just see this and you know right away, Social Security, oh, I know a lot about the New Deal, and you can talk about the changing role of government, you're going to answer this one and then go back to question 1. This way, you're spending your time answering the questions that you have the most likelihood of earning those points for. So that's the most important strategy for the SAQ. And if you want help on how to actually write your answers, the formula you'll follow, you can let me know and tag a friend who this would benefit as well. The LEQ is not as scary as it seems, and you should feel much more confident than I can tell you are. And here is why. You can score really well on the LEQ if you only know 2 pieces of evidence. If you only know 2 things that are specific related to the prompt, you can score better than like 80% of students. Let me explain how that is. For the LEQ, you're going to get 3 choices. Okay, there's going to be 3 different prompts. Chances are you're going to know 2 things about one of them. Okay, that's all you need to know. So that should help you like relax a little bit, think more clearly when you're going to write your essay. Okay, just having that confidence and that a little bit more calm than when you're anxious and nervous and scared and worried. It's really hard to think. So just breathe when you get to the LEQ, take a second and pause. I only need to know 2 things and I can write a darn good essay. So once you know 2 things about one of those prompts, that helps you with your thesis. You'll have 2 categories to include in it. Okay, and then your first body paragraph, what is it going to be about? One of those things you know. Topic sentence, explain what that piece of evidence is, and then you have to analyze it. To analyze it, you got to do 2 things, and you can get 2 more points if you do this for both of your evidences. So the first thing you want to do is explain how this demonstrates the historical thinking skill. That sounds weird. Let me explain what that means. If it's asking about causes, you got to not just say that this did cause World War II or whatever. You got to explain why it caused it. Break it down. If it's asking about an effect, you don't just say that this was an effect of World War II. Why was this an effect of World War II? You got to explain the reasons for it. And the other thing you need to do for this one piece of evidence still is explain how it supports your thesis. That I call that the so what sentence. So what? How does this prove your thesis? How does this answer the prompt? And if you do that for 2 pieces of evidence, you can get your thesis point. You can get like summing up the evidence. You can get analyzing the evidence and the historical thinking skill. That's a 4 on the test. If you can do the context, you can get a 5. Boom. I've graded DBQs at the AP reading for the last 3 years, and here are the 5 most common mistakes that students make on the DBQ that costs them points. The first one is write in your introduction paragraph when you're doing your context. Some students, they don't provide context. They think they are, but they're just already answering the prompt. Remember, context, you want to talk about the larger picture, the bigger story going on, and generally you do this by jumping back and explaining how we got here. If your essay is on the effects of the Civil War, your context is going to be on the causes of the Civil War. Don't mess that up. Number 2, and this one's heartbreaking, it's quoting the documents. Now, you can quote the documents. You're not going to like lose a point if you do that, but some students quote instead of summing up or explaining the documents, and they miss the easiest point on the whole exam. So don't quote the documents. Just explain what it was you were going to quote. You can't ever earn a point by quoting. That we have the documents in front of us. We know what they are. You need to explain them. Number 3 is when students are hipping. Some students only identify the hip that they're going after. So they identify the audience, or they identify the purpose or the point of view, but they don't, and this is how you earn the point, explain why this matters or explain why it's significant. So if you're talking about how Thomas Paine, the purpose was to get Americans to support independence, like you have to explain that. Don't just identify the purpose, explain it, or whatever hip you're going after. Number 4 is another heartbreaker. My students do it like all year long. Finally, they really stopped. It's forgetting the outside evidence. This is one of the easiest points on the whole exam, but some students, they're so focused on all of the documents that they forget this very easy point. Outside evidence is like 2 sentences and you earn another point. So don't forget this one. And lastly, and I have a few videos back that you should definitely check out. Some students don't prioritize the easy points. They try to get all of the points and they rush through the 4 very easy points, trying to get the much harder ones like the complexity and the argumentation. And because they're rushing through to try to get to the harder stuff, they miss out on some of the easier stuff. And some students, they write decent essays and they end up with a 2 because they just didn't cover their bases well enough. And you should just be slowing down, taking your time, making sure you get the 4 easy points, and then scoop up another couple points along the way, and you'll score better than like 90% of students. All right, let's talk about outside evidence for your DBQs. Now, where should you place the outside evidence within your essay? The short answer is anywhere, but the better answer is anywhere except for your introduction paragraph. And that's because in your introduction paragraph, you're actually gonna have a decent amount of outside evidence because you're writing the context. And the context for your essay is not about the documents. It's about what happened before the prompt and what led up to your essay. So that's gonna have outside evidence. If you're putting your outside evidence in there, it might get lost, and the person grading your essay might just consider that part of your context. So you should put your outside evidence anywhere else, in your second paragraph, third paragraph, wherever. It could be its own little paragraph at the very end. Now, the thing that's most important about outside evidence is just not forgetting it. So what I tell my students is right when you get to the DBQ, you can either type it out nice and big, outside evidence, or just OE, or on your little scratch paper, write OE, because this is one of the easiest points to earn on the whole exam. The outside evidence is one of the easiest things to earn, but some students forget about it because they're so focused on the documents and analyzing them and interpreting them and using them and hipping them that they forget this easy point. And the next thing I would really encourage you to do is after you use outside evidence, just put it in parentheses. Or you could just have a sentence frame that says, a piece of outside evidence that also shows how much change there was in the economy between these years, is this. And then explain it. Your outside evidence should be about 2 sentences, explain what it is, and then why it's relevant to your essay. And I would really encourage you, if you can think of 2 pieces of outside evidence, just bring up another piece of outside evidence, because some students miss this point. They include something really good, they explain it really well, but it's outside the time period of the prompt. So if the prompt years were 1763 and 1783, but they talked about the writing of the Constitution or the Federalist Papers, they would not get any points for that. They would miss that because it's outside of the time frame of the prompt. All right, that should be easy peasy for the DB Queasy. Let me know what other questions you have. Okay, so this has been the most frequent question as of late. How do you earn the hit point? What would get you that point, and how do students miss it? And this, I'm sorry to say, would not earn the point. You simply cannot say or identify the purpose, the point of view, or the audience. You have to actually explain it. And that's why if you can explain the context, generally that's a good way to earn the hit point. I just find it's a lot harder. So instead of just identifying the audience, the point of view, or the purpose, you're going to use this sentence frame and it should help you earn this point. So here it is, write this down or save this video. X document was created for Y audience to get them to take Z action because this is what it looks like in practice. Thomas Paine's Common Sense, document 2 or whatever, was directed towards neutral colonists because he wanted them to support the movement for independence. Now, that alone right there might earn the point because you're kind of connecting some details and explaining it, but I just add in a because at the end because some were still not ready to take that jump and the independence movement needed more people to support it. Here's another example. The Rosie the Riveter propaganda poster was directed towards working age women in order to get them to sign up for war industry jobs or jobs in the Defense Department because there was a labor shortage due to the war. Again, X document was directed towards Y audience to get them to take Z action. And then if you can, add a because that's just icing on the cake there. Now, you don't have to identify and explain two parts of the HIP. You only have to do one, but generally the audience and the purpose are so tied together. It just makes sense and helps you explain that document better and earn that point. And if you can do this for 4 documents, you can earn not just the HIP point, but also the complexity point. But just in case you mess up with one of them, try to do 5. And if you have the time for it, do 6. Let's go over the 4 easiest points to earn on the DBQ so that even if you've been struggling with writing DBQs all year or you've been slacking off, you can still rack up these 4 points and then score better than like 70 to 75% of students. And this is really important. You want to make sure you go after the easy points. The other 3 points on the DBQ are much harder to earn, but some students, they just try to get all of the points and they end up flying by the easy points. They miss 1 or 2 of them along the way, and then they don't earn those harder points because they're a lot harder. You want to make sure you get these points before you go after the more challenging ones. All right, so here's the rubric for the DBQ. The top 4 are the easy 4. In my other videos, I'll go over how to earn those other points, but let's make sure we get those easy 4. For your context, okay, you read the prompt a few times to make sure you know exactly what it's asking. And then for the context, you just like jump back in time and bring us to the prompt. So if the essay is about the effects of the Civil War, your context would be about what led us to the Civil War, what caused it, what was the Civil War. All right. Thesis, you just have to answer the prompt with at least 1 line of reasoning, like 1 specific piece of evidence. 2 or 3, definitely better, but you can get this point with just having 1 line of reasoning. How easy is that? Next is the easiest point, I think, on the whole exam. You just have to sum up 3 documents. Almost every student earns this. What causes students to lose this point is if they're quoting the document instead of explaining it, or they misinterpret the document. So although you only have to do 3, try to do 4 or 5 just as a fail-safe. And then there's the outside evidence point. This is really easy. Some students just forget to include this. I think it's because they're so focused on the documents and they're trying to get the harder points that they forget about this very easy point. What I tell my students to do is right when you get to the DBQ, write on your scratch paper or type out on your document OE to remember the outside evidence. This is just 1 to 2 sentences of something that can answer the prompt, explain what it is and how it relates to this essay and to what's being asked. Although you only need 1 piece of outside evidence, I would definitely do 2 because this is pretty easy, just in case your first one was off for some reason. So when you're writing your DBQ, pause, breathe, double check that you're getting these easy points, and then go after the more challenging ones. And if you want to know how, follow along and watch my other vids.